The new tobacco policy approved by the Board of Regents this past March has caused a bit of a stir on the campus of the University of Georgia. The new rules that went into effect a little over a week ago prohibit the use of any tobacco products on the property of university system institutions. University of Georgia Vice President for Public Affairs, Dr. Tom Jackson, is the university's official spokesperson. He has been busy answering the many questions that students, faculty, and staff have about the tobacco policy. Over the past few weeks, he has also discussed this issue with members of the media, from local news outlets to the New York Times. This week, he spoke with me about the tobacco policy and its impact on the UGA community. I'm James Thompson, and this is the Athens Journal Interview of the Week. Dr. Jackson, thank you for joining me today.
Glad to be here.
Let's start with the formation of the tobacco policy. This policy applies to the entire university system, not just UGA, and was enacted by the Board of Regents. Did UGA or any of the other institutions have any input on this policy?
Well, the campuses have had their own smoking policies for some years. There was some variation in them. At UGA, our policy did not allow smoking within 35 feet of the entrance of a building or near any air intakes on heating and air systems or at any bus stops. Other campuses had complete bans. Many of them were smaller campuses. So there was sort of a hodgepodge of rules and regs around the campuses. So the system thought it would be better to bring all that together under one policy. They consulted with the campuses, but it's the regents' vote. The regents set the policy, and we follow the policy.
Gotcha. Do you think UGA would have eventually prohibited tobacco products on its own, or would it have taken a policy like the one we've seen to get a complete tobacco ban?
Well, in fact, we were headed in that direction. We had already done so on the health sciences campus, simply because of the mission of that campus and the size of that campus. It's more compact. And, I mean, let's face it, they teach public health and medicine
Right.
over there, and, you know, to set a good example for those students. So we were headed in that direction, and we're sort of running a test on the health sciences campus that could be extended to the whole campus, but the regents took this action more quickly than that.
Gotcha. You were recently quoted in the New York Times as saying, quote, "We're taking the approach of a positive educational campaign, not an enforcement campaign." What are some steps the university has taken to educate students about the policy and the reasoning behind it?
Well, of course, we have the Let's Clear the Air campaign. We've got Russ, Uga, his mug up on the on the posters, so it sort of gives it a feel good. And the university has cessation classes that are going on in the College of Pharmacy and in the University Health Center that faculty, staff, and students can go to. And I don't know what the numbers are, but I bet you we have more staff that smoke than either faculty or students. So I'm thinking that people can avail themselves of these cessation classes, and we've had people tell us, "I've been needing something to push me not to smoke, and this probably will be it. So I'll give it a shot."
Right. And I get the feeling that that's kind of what this is about, more than, you were also quoted in the New York Times as saying this isn't a gotcha campaign. I get the feeling this is more about helping people kind of make that leap, that decision to go from smoking or tobacco use to deciding to try to live a healthier life.
Right. Well, as I said, this is a campus in which we research health issues and we teach medicine, and so it just makes sense that something that's a proved killer, a carcinogen, is something that we would encourage people not to use. So, yeah, I've had some media come through here wanting us to sick police on people, wrestle them to the ground, and put them in handcuffs, and that's really not what this is about. This is a policy, not a law.
Gotcha. It is a policy, but what consequences might there be for an individual who absolutely refuses to comply with said policy?
Well, they'll have to push a long way before that'll be a problem. I was looking back, and we've had policies against smoking for a while now. Just this total ban is just October 1st. There's never been a case in student conduct ever about somebody violating a smoking policy. Mm-hmm. It's mainly to say we don't do this here, and if you see somebody smoking somewhere you don't want them to smoke, you're free to walk up to them and say, "That's against policy. Please don't do that here." If somebody's really belligerent about it, a student could be taken to the student conduct court. Faculty or staff can be taken to their supervisor and written up under employment policy. Yes, that could be up to and including termination, but that's like saying they could get such and such a sentence in court. You hear that on the media all the time. What could they get? Well, they don't get what they could get.
Right.
You usually don't go to the maximum on something like that.
Sure. And so the new rules have been in effect for about a week now, like you said, October 1st. From what you say, it sounds like the university has not had any major problems with compliance.
We haven't had anybody complain to this office, and I haven't had any senior administrators say they've received any complaints yet. I don't know if there's been any at lower levels. We had a couple of folks smoking on the bridge between Miller and Tate before the football game on Saturday that some folks were concerned about, but they told them that it's against policy, and the folks put their cigarettes away. They were, not aware that we were now.
Right, because that was kind of a hot spot for smoking. Before.
Right, and the fact that it's a football Saturday, you're not going to
Sure.
enforce it there. It's going to be hard to enforce there anyway. But no real issues. The little protest the day before it went into effect on October 1st drew, I think, 12 people. So I don't know how many smokers we have on campus, but
Right.
most smokers are used to staying out of folks' way. But already before this, and they're of being considerate of people and just keeping their smoke off of other people. And I think they'll continue to work on that now.
Sure. I'm a resident assistant, and I've had to ask a few people to step away from the building. The 35-foot policy before this, and that was my experience also. That most people are very happy to, if they know the rules, to follow
Sure.
them.
And now I've referred some people to the map. If you go online under maps on the UGA website, you can pull up a property line map. It literally shows you where the property lines are all over campus, and what sidewalk you can step onto, what street you can step onto, and you're off campus and you could smoke there,
Right.
standing on the sidewalk. So that's what some people are doing. They're just walking to the nearest sidewalk that's a city street. Not all sidewalks are city streets. I would caution against that.
Sure.
But there's 17 city streets running through campus. If you can look at the map and tell which one it is, you can walk to that one and smoke.
Sure. And to be clear, this is not saying that students can't smoke at all. It's just saying you can't do it on university property.
Not on university property.
Gotcha. Well, going back to the protest a little bit that you mentioned a second ago, some students have been very supportive of the policy, and then others, such as the ones that you mentioned, have criticized the policy, saying that it's an affront to personal choice and responsibility. Do you see it that way at all?
Well, it does inhibit their personal choice, but a speed limit sign on the interstate inhibits my ability to ride 90 miles an hour, even though I like to. But it's dangerous for me and for other people. Smoking is dangerous for you and for other people, and society is determined to set some limits on it.
And I guess that's a limit that you choose to respect when you decide to be a student at the University of Georgia.
Right. It's a policy. If you don't like the policies here, you've really got a problem, because we live by policies and rules. They're what make society go around.
Right.
And so yeah, most folks are law-abiding, policy-abiding citizens, and they do their best to stay within the rules. If you don't like the rules, you can work to have them changed.
Right.
That doesn't mean you violate them while you're working to have them changed.
The policy states that its goal is to, quote, preserve and improve the health, comfort, and environment of students, employees, and any persons occupying our campuses, end quote. How effective do you think the policy will be in meeting this objective?
Well, I don't think it was much of a problem to start with, frankly, on this campus. I haven't seen a lot of smokers. The last football game before the policy went into effect, I thought, okay, this is really where we're going to have an issue, is on football Saturdays. And as I walked through that crowd, I saw very few people smoking. So if it helps those few people who are still smoking to get the gumption to quit, then it's a good thing and it's achieved its objective.
Sure. Even those supportive of the policy have had their doubts about its enforceability. Now, you just said that it wasn't really a big problem to start with, so I guess that kind of makes enforceability not as much of an issue. But is that a concern the administration shares?
Well, we do need to show to the regents that we are making efforts to enforce the policy.
Right, because the president's ultimately responsible.
And he has to report back to the regents as to how it's gone. But whether we'd go out and make an example of somebody, I mean, we would not do that. Just for the purpose of making a case. It's only if somebody's just really being obnoxious to persons around them when they've asked them not to be, would we have that kind of issue. So everybody wants to run to an enforcement take on it, when in fact I think it's an educational take we ought to be looking at, a positive take. I also had an interesting question from somebody who said, how are you going to enforce this on weekends when faculty and staff aren't around? I said, well, that implies that only faculty and staff are going to enforce this. We've got more students than anybody else around here. The students ought to be enforcing it, because I bet you 95% of our students don't smoke.
Right.
And they're the ones that ought to be enforcing it on the others.
Sure. Gotcha. How will the University of Georgia community benefit if everyone gets on board with this policy?
Well, I think it's just as the policy itself states, that it's a matter of public health. Secondhand smoke is dangerous. It's almost as dangerous as the firsthand smoke is to the smoker, to other children. When I was growing up and when I started working here at the university, people smoked everywhere. My preacher smoked in church. People smoked in this office all day long. The place was full of smoke. Classrooms, students could sit there and smoke while the faculty member taught. It is very different today, and I think students today have a hard time realizing how far this has come in a relatively short period of time, and certainly in my lifetime. And so, we're right at the end of cleaning up around the edges now, as far as people not smoking.
And over the years, has it just been kind of a progression of stricter regulations on smoking, or has it just been more of a cultural shift?
It's been education. It's been people dying of cancer. It's been warnings put on cigarette packages by Congress. It's been that sort of thing, where it's been raising the taxes on cigarettes so high that it gets to be cost prohibitive for people. Society's been working against smoking for a while. I mean, it really got bad after the World War II, when soldiers had been smoking on the battlefronts and they came home with their cigarettes. And you saw the most smoking in society in the late 40s and up to the mid-1950s. And then the cancer research started coming in, and it went down pretty precipitously after that, because people are smart.
Right.
You tell them this is going to kill you, they'll stop doing it.
Mm-hmm. Has there been a similar issue that you've seen during your time in this office, where it's been a matter of educating people on a policy, that anything similar to this smoking ban? Or
well, as I think about it, it sort of falls in line with pollution. I remember when the St. Johns River there at Jacksonville would catch on fire. There was so much oil in it, and they'd literally have a fire out on the river. Or when the air in our cities was so dense on a summer day that it was brown, you couldn't see through the air. We've cleaned a lot of that up as a society. We finally we changed to unleaded gas in our cars. We changed to the sorts of emissions controls on cars. Congress did that, but based on research. So as a society, we've been determining these things that are fouling up our environment and fouling up our health, and taking steps to correct that. And so I think we've made a lot of progress in that regard.
Absolutely. Going forward, has the university identified any problems with the policy that's going to need some tinkering, or is everything pretty much going as expected, very smoothly?
Well, it's just been a week, so we'll
wait
and see. A little early. We've had some vandalism on some of the signs.
Mm-hmm.
People have tried to turn some of the signs into political statements about what's not allowed at UGA, more than just tobacco. But no major problems. It's been pretty smooth, and once again, because it's not a major shift for most people.
Sure.
Most people are already not smoking.
Right. And I think some of the ashtrays or smoke.
They're gone.
They're gone.
Yeah. If you don't have a cigarette lit on campus, you don't need a place to put a cigarette. Right. It's a discouragement.
Sure.
And if somebody throws one on the ground, that's littering, and we'll have another issue, but we'll deal with that.
Gotcha. And that's probably a bigger issue than the first one, I would think.
Littering's not a good thing to do. There's another societal problem. People used to throw stuff out of their car riding down the road. The roadsides were just littered with paper and trash when I was growing up. And society just doesn't do that anymore.
And that's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Very good thing. Well, let's shift to your work here in the Public Relations Office as we kind of wrap this up, if I may. You've been doing this for
28 years.
so you've seen a lot.
Yeah, I've worked for 5 presidents. I started under Dr. Davison, and I actually didn't work for Dr. Stanford, but I covered him as a news reporter here in Athens. Then I came back to work for the university under President Knapp and Dr. Adams and President Moorhead.
So you started out in journalism before coming to higher education.
Yeah, I worked my way through the university as a radio announcer, then worked here in this PR office for a while, and then left to do Atlanta TV for 8 years. I was a TV reporter for the NBC affiliate in Atlanta, but they based me in Athens, and I did a report out of Athens every evening on the news for 8 years, 1980 to 1988. And then Dr. Knapp became president, and he hired me to do the job I'm doing now. I've been doing it ever since.
And for somebody that's not familiar with the workings of those in higher education administration, how would you describe your role?
We're the keeper of the message. I tell people jokingly, only half jokingly, that we brag on the good things and explain the bad things. We're the spokespeople to the media. We do the press releases. We print the faculty staff newspaper, the alumni magazine. We run the website, uga.edu. We run the visitor center. We run the radio station and the TV station. We produce the videos you see in your Welcome Center tours and in your admissions office things. So that's the sort of thing we do, the messaging, the football PSA you see on Saturdays on games. We produce that. So we research the messages of the university and then send them out to our target audiences through the best vehicle we can find to get that message to them.
So you're busy.
We stay busy. We do.
What's been the most rewarding part of your job?
Well, working with students is frankly the best thing. That's why we're here. You want to be a part of something that's going to outlast you. That this university is going to be here 250 years from now, and maybe I've got a brick or two in the foundation that have helped put there. But I've done the PA for the Redcoat Band for 40 years, and working with all those students over all those years, or going to speak to a class, or the chances I've had to teach, or doing things like I'm doing right here with you, working with student journalists. It's been, that's what's rewarding over time. And then having them come back. A guy that I worked with for some years when he was a student reporter on the Red and Black is now with the London Financial Times, and he was back in town the other day. He's now 45 years old, and we had dinner together. And it was just great to just catch up and to hear his life story and how things are going, and that sort of experience is what makes it worthwhile.
Absolutely. Any final comment or message to the university community regarding the smoking policy?
Well, I think we've had bigger challenges over time than this one. It's probably something whose time was going to come at some point, and the Regents decided it's going to come now. And I appreciate the cooperation, and I think that faculty, staff, and students as a community can take on the responsibility to help their colleagues figure out why not to smoke on campus and encourage people not to do so.
Awesome. Dr. Jackson, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you for asking.